And welcome back to this CNBC Africa special broadcast where we are here at the Siemens Park discussing solutions for Greater Johannesburg's infrastructure challenges. We're now joined by Monique Griffith, who is the Deputy Officer at Smart City Office. Welcome to the panel, Monique. I'd like to actually start with you. So we've been discussing some of the current challenges, where we are, and the short-term solutions, but now we want to turn our focus towards the future. Smart City Office. Now we've talked about energy issues, we've talked about water issues. What are some of the challenges that the Smart City strategy has come to solve?
Well, particularly, we're looking towards how do we future-proof the city. So we know right now that we are at the precipice of something, either a very good solution that moves us into a positive direction, or we go and we have more challenges to deal with. Smart City is looking at how do we bring the private sector, municipalities, and even our citizens together for solutions into the future. I mean, this is probably the crossroads where we really all need to be hands on deck. And so we are looking at creating that enabled environment, looking at how do we bring in more innovation, creating an urban living lab or a sandbox or a more learning environment where people who are on the ground as our citizens who understand their challenges can bring solutions forward, but that's paired up with the municipality who owns the infrastructure, and that's paired up with the private sector who, one, has the investment finances to put into it and often have the resources and the expertise. So really, to be smart going forward, it has to be a combined effort. Another thing, I mean, we were able to put this wonderful World Cup together, and that was literally coming together of all of those sectors in order to have that shown. Well, this is a World Cup type of event for us to create this world-class city that we say that we are promising our citizens going forward.
Now, Aradna, I'd like to turn my focus to you. At your opening statement, you mentioned a few technologies that would be beneficial for us in terms of implementing them. Which ones are these? What are we looking at in terms of innovation when it comes to the energy infrastructure?
I think we don't have to actually look very far because I want to say this and might tickle a bit of a few people, but in the city of Cape Town, they have been implementing and creating enabling environments for this combination of people that Monique has spoken of. And it's bringing about, you know, this decentralization kind of vision that I spoke about. And one such, I think, combination solution is the aggregator solution. So it's basically creating small grids within the actual network of whatever municipality jurisdiction that is. And within that grid, you create almost a time shift enabling environment for people to use generation when you think it may be cheaper, and for them to actually generate electricity when you know that the grid needs it and when it is actually more expensive to generate it, and that's during the peak times. And it's a combination of solutions with rooftop PV and battery storage technologies, as well as the digitalization element that definitely needs to be there to be smart. And now also going back into flexibilities and, you know, the actual demand side of the grid. So trying to create enabling environment for customers on the ground to use energy at the time that, as I said, it's cheaper and generate when it's actually more expensive. So it's basically a combination of those solutions, but the main key driver is the smart aspect of it. And you need to almost move in the direction of what we call active distribution systems, where you are able to, you know, monitor things in real time and understand what your network is actually doing, create enabling environments for you to actually make money when you need to, and, you know, you create that, the load shedding aspect and reduce those challenges. And just going back into City of Cape Town, they've actually gone to a stage where we are having stage 3 load shedding, they are having stage 1 load shedding. And it's because of the environments that they've created within the municipalities to enable these aspects. And as Sabina has mentioned, the feed-in tariff is one of the major enabling environments for this to happen. So it's also trying to understand those solutions, but keeping in mind the cost and, the future of the infrastructure that is needed as well.
Now, when we talk innovation from an energy perspective, I think it's quite easy to understand when you're talking rooftop PV, when you're talking battery storage. But from a water perspective, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the way I define smart within the water sector point of view and innovation is not technology only. By smart, we're talking about new ways of doing things, different ways of doing things. I think if you really start at the top end of our value chain, we have been largely dependent on surface water. And we are looking at different ways as a sector to get water into the system. You'll see that by and large, coastally, the sector is moving towards desalination. Here, we are moving towards groundwater utilization. For us, that's smart. That's finding solutions different to the challenges that we have. And as you go down the value chain, you're also looking at, of course, you're bringing technology as well, digital technology in terms of solving the challenges that we have. As we speak, we are detecting leaks from satellite, Historically, we used to go around, walk the pipes, and mechanically trying to check if there's a leak here. You don't have to do that now. You go into a satellite, it tells you where the leak is, so you're able to respond quickly. And if you cannot, as an example, find the exact location of the leak, we have a smart ball, we call it a smart ball, you send it through the pipe, it tells you exactly where the leak is, and you send a technician to deal with that. So I think we are looking at, doing things differently. And for example, when you're talking about building dams, the surface water, you're also creating a carbon footprint. We're talking about decarbonization. So it means if you start drawing from the ground, you are eliminating that. Decentralization as well. We are looking at, do we really have to build big dams to supply everybody? What can we do locally? In communities, do we really have to get water from in Gauteng situation, so to give people of Karankua north of Gauteng to get water? The answer may not be. So I think for us, innovation is exactly that. What we did about 3 years ago, we established what we call an innovation hub, underpinned by our strategy that is innovation-driven, risk-based, to exactly find smart ways, innovative ways of doing things. In the Innovation Hub is driven by Rainwater Institution, and this is where clever men and women get together and say, what if we do this? What if this happens? To find the solutions to the challenges that we have, not only at BAC level, but across the entire value chain.
There's a lot in what you've just said, but one thing that I particularly liked hearing was the notion of, do we have to be centralized? What about a decentralized structure? Because that also translates to the transfer of jobs into rural areas, for example. And now also when we're talking innovation, when we're talking green technology, renewables, there's also this notion of the skills. Do we have the skills that we need? Do we need to retransform some of the skills that are currently present? Now, Sabina, I know that Siemens has been working on this in terms of partnering with institutions to develop the skills of the future for 4IR quite specifically. What does that look like for you?
Well, look, I mean, from our point of view, we have a partnership, for instance, with the CSIR in order to develop skills for Industry 4.0, and this is really around the areas of smart townships, water, electricity, food and beverage, but also cybersecurity. Because one thing I do know, and we have seen that also over the last couple of months, is that also digital technology is improving, and I think South Africa, the African continent currently has about 139 data centers already. Europe has 219, so we are really catching up. So digital technologies become really state of the art, but it also means we need to deal with potential people which don't have the right intention when using these kind of systems, and therefore the partnership with the CSRR to develop these cybersecurity aspects as part of our Charter of Trust is something really vital, because it's an overarching concept to ensure that there is system integrity. But on the other side, I mean, you talk about skills. We as Siemens have a number of partnerships with the universities, with TVET colleges. And for instance, one part which we did, we had about 6 months ago, we gave licenses to about 40 universities in South Africa and in the African continent, relating to coding software, our Mendix coding software, so that people have, and young people have, the possibility to use coding as an entry into the workforce, because you not necessarily need like a mathematics degree for it. Another initiative which we just recently closed is with the UN Women Initiative for 625 women from the African continent. We call it Girls Can Code, which we basically bring close to coding, and through our people organization, we have also developed a program which we call Siemens, the C Mentoring Program, where our engineers and students, which are part of our bursary system, mentoring other young people to actually enter the workforce and to participate in our business, and hopefully also in our clients' business, and wherever these kind of skills are needed.
And that's so important, particularly the notion of having these skills immediately integrated to be able to participate in the workplace of today. Now, Monique, when it comes to the smart city, when we look at the city of today and the city of the future, what's missing in terms of skills?
Well, before we go into skills, I think one of the things that we're missing in the conversation is enabled environment, because we keep talking about how we need innovation, and we come up with solutions, but municipalities, and specifically Johannesburg, we don't necessarily have the enabled environment to absorb those things. Therefore, even the skills discussion, where are the skills going to go to if we are not creating the enabled environment for all these wonderful solutions that the private sector has? So I think one of the things that we are focusing and honing in on is how we're looking at frameworks that help us to bring innovation in. We've got a framework going now that has to be presented in order to make it easier for pilots and for the private sector to demonstrate what they're able to do. But then the next thing is the longevity and the sustainability of that. Because once they finish a pilot, how do we bring them into the city as a contract? They demonstrate that it works, they demonstrate that people love it, but then we can't bring them in permanently into the city. So that's another thing that we are addressing as the smart city, because if we don't get this enabled environment together, we have solutions from everyone, and beautiful solutions, but they won't go into the city and be permanent. I mean, we used to have that app where you could just show where there's a pothole in the roads, and the JRA would come and repair it nicely. But it was a pilot. After the pilot was over, it's gone. They couldn't bring it in permanently to the city. So ours is looking at how do we set the groundwork for all of this innovative environment to happen, and once those solutions actually demonstrate that they work, that we can bring them in permanently into the city. And that's probably one of our biggest hurdles with the MFMA and the PFMA, and we have to figure out how do we create kind of an exception for these particular types of things that deal with the biggest problems that we have in the city and the infrastructure that we need for the future.
Absolutely. Sabina, I see you nodding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, look, one thing really is the public procurement framework, which we currently see, because it has the right intention to why it's there. But, particularly if you want to develop something where, the service of the residents is the output, it becomes very difficult to make it a commercial proposition. So if you look at the South African Constitution, so water and electricity is a basic right. So a company never will be able to provide a basic right on a commercial basis. So it can only be the state who can provide for it. And I mean, we as Siemens, we have had a good experience with one of the projects in our health environment. It's in Durban, the Albert Luthuli Hospital, which was a public-private partnership. And so the government ensured that the facility was given, the government organized the doctors and the nurses, and the private sector organized to run the hospital. And so if you now go to a public hospital, all the discussions you have here in Johannesburg, you maybe go there and you see how a hospital is run when exactly this partnership comes into fruition. You don't go there, there are no queues, people, it's a fully paperless hospital, your files are not going missing, and the doctor will be able to record even what your treatments have been, and it makes sense. So I do hope that in the context of also Operation Vulindlela, but also the smart city environment, that we get to the point that we can partner together, because in some stuff, business is just better in running it. And I want to give you an example also on a program which eventually we have now made progress, and this is for Sebokeng. Sebokeng, you know, it's part of also the Vaal system. It's a township which is currently under administration. You will have heard they have no water, they have no electricity. Storage is an issue. So during COVID, we decided we want to do something good, and we want to see, you know, how we can help these people, because one of the major topics also electricity is the biggest challenge, but we do know water is such a bigger challenge, because if you don't have water, you can basically do nothing. Yeah. And if you don't have water, you can't wash your hands, you can't have basic hygiene, and obviously having access to water and as well as electricity makes you part of society. So we started together with the IDC to develop this project, and we now eventually got it into the funding mode to develop a concept on how the community can run water and electricity with their own skills, have a youth development program around it, so that the young people with the Gauteng Development Agency can contribute their skills they have already learned. So I'm very excited to get this implemented.
I can feel the excitement, and thank you for sharing those insights, actually. It's good to have tangible examples to refer back to. Now, Monique, what I particularly liked with your points of enabled environments, or rather what sparked an interest in me, is that it speaks to the integration, it speaks to value chains, it speaks to ensuring that all actors and players are integrated and that we don't increase the graveyard of pilot projects. Now, Aradhana, you've done some research and worked and advocated quite a bit when it comes to the integration of small and medium-sized businesses into this value chain. Now, from your perspective, are we where we need to be?
No, I would say that if we look at, the Renewable Independent Producer Power Program, I think there has been a lot of regulation around what is called local content. And I know there's a lot of different understandings of what local content should be. And yes, it does mainly refer to the infrastructure or like the actual hardware that's part of the value chains. But it also refers to embedding local small, medium, and micro enterprises within the value chains and trying to create economic growth for that. If we look at South Africa, small SMMEs actually create the most employment in South Africa. So it's about over 60% that SMMEs contribute to in South Africa. So if we are not creating that enabling environment for SMMEs to be part of these value chains, then we are losing out as a country. And I understand that, it's good to have big private partners, from local or international contexts within these programs, and that does create economic growth. But at the end of the day, we also need to create growth in South Africa, and not only economic growth, but actual development within the citizens of the country, because we have the triple threat: unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Yeah. And we need to be able to solve those issues with these new solutions that we are creating from a sustainable point of view. And I I feel that, this has been lacking, and that is why the CSR is, quite big on empowering SMMEs in various sectors. And one such program is one that we are actually going to be launching in November, called the Energy Industry Support Program. And with various partners, we are trying to create this capacity building and empowering kind of network for SMMEs to technically incubate some of them in the energy sector, to help them to move from one stage to another in their business, as well as provide the information in terms of what opportunities exist, because they don't even know what that is. They know that, yes, there's a solar PV panel, or they call it, normal PV panels, but what that means for a business and how they can, embed themselves in that value chain is definitely not understood. There are quite a few people that do know it, and I think that they consistently, participate in the REAP program, but the other SMMEs fall behind, and, we could be creating a lot of opportunities and employment opportunities in that growth as well. So I believe that capacity building for SMMEs is very important, especially if we are looking at, creating this other enabling factors like increasing of the next REAP bid window and the embedded generation rules of, the licensing regulations. If you are going to be fast-tracking those processes, trying to incorporate big generation in the power grid, you are going to be leaving behind the others because you're trying to fast-track that. And we do not have the capacity, enough capacity to be able to leverage off those opportunities enough. So that's one thing. And I just want to also touch on something that Monique had mentioned in terms of enabling environments. I think capacity building within municipalities and government is something that is seriously lacking. If we are looking at these opportunities and moving into sustainable infrastructure, these processes are all new. They are different processes that municipalities are not normally used to working with. They don't, like, some of them may not even understand the technology itself. So that capacity building is also very important. And if we are talking about PPPs, if they don't have the capacity, you won't be able to implement such. So those things are quite important for creating leveraging the opportunities that these new landscapes bring.
And that brings me into the perfect segue. How can we leverage an opportunity? There's a wise saying that says, never waste a crisis. So we are in a state of crisis. We have an energy crisis. We have a water crisis. How can we leverage the opportunity? And I'm going to take this as your closing statements, and I'll start with you, Sipho.
Yeah, I just think, talking about skills as well, one of the easiest way out is to, as an example, embrace renewables. We are making a serious investment on hydropower, where we are making an investment in terms of converting kinetic energy in our pipes into electrical energy by introduction of turbines. So we are making a serious investment in reskilling our employees, because we do have engineers and scientists, electrical, mechanical, you name them, but conventional in the true sense of how we used to do business. So I think when we reskill them, we have that perfect understanding that we have not done renewables before. We have not done hydroelectric power. So we have identified a cadre of employees, because a lot of them are scared by fourth industrial revolution. They think, are we going to lose our jobs to robots? And I think our view is, no, you have to rescue. Somebody has to operate those robots. So we are undergoing a serious investment in terms of reskilling ourselves and looking at different ways of doing things, precisely because we want to leverage on the, as an example, in the electricity crisis that we have.
Okay. Sorry, sir. I'm just going to ask the answers to be short. We are ending in just 2 minutes.
No problem. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. And Sabina, how can we leverage opportunities?
Well, I think as you speak about the crisis, I do believe we have to do a couple of bold moves. And just think about Egypt. Yeah, I mean, they addressed electricity and water and transport in one shot. And that doesn't mean that you don't do small, medium enterprise development, because what we need in South Africa is economic growth. And economic growth, we're only going to get if foreign direct investment is coming. It's only going to happen if we are able to provide water, electricity 24/7 every single day. And so therefore, having this concurrent running, decide on a few things which we really want to do now, not having legislation permanently coming in between to slow it down. I think that's one prize. And in parallel, I do believe that with the broad-based Black economic empowerment framework, we have a number of opportunities to have companies which are empowered on that level to also feed in small, medium enterprises as part of the ownership. And if we work with what we have as legislation, we should be good, but let us do a few bold moves, because otherwise Egypt is really doing well.
Yeah. Thank you. Aradna?
I think I'm going to speak from a government perspective. I think having policy frameworks that is certain in terms of the development of the country. So looking at the integrated resource plan, trying to be certain in terms of the demand for this future growth of sustainable energy, the energy plan as well that is supposed to be launched. I think trying to create that certainty in the market so that you know that for these private partners as well, that it's definitely going to happen in the country. And that also enables the skills development and us trying to leverage off those opportunities.
Thank you. And Monique?
My ideal would be to have pilots happening all over the city, but the way to make that happen is to have a transparent process where all of those who have a solution, we can bring them into a room and we identify all levels of engagement, be they SME or your bigger companies and your internationals. And then we find where our key challenges are and where we need to throw those solutions. And then the municipality have a process in place, which we are recommending, so that we can actually keep those solutions on when they demonstrate that they are successful.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. You were an exceptional panel. I certainly have learned a lot, and I believe that our viewers also have. It truly shows that when we bring brilliant minds together, we can achieve much, and that our infrastructure challenges don't have to be challenges. They can be solutions. They can help us in creating the jobs that we desperately need for our youth, in creating the jobs of the future, and in helping our nation move forward in a way that benefits all of us. So thank you very much to all of you, and a big and special thanks to our audience for tuning in to this CNBC Africa special broadcast. My name is Tanya Habimana. Thank you for joining us today.